Welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rihanna.
And I'm Connie. And we are here with Tina. So, how do you deal when shit gets real? Tell us more about yourself, Tina.
Hello, I am Tina Mateo Bowl. I am a mother of two. My oldest is 31 and my youngest is 9. I'm a military wife living here in beautiful Hawaii. So the shit really got real when I had a baby at 42. That's when the shit got real.
Yeah, that does seem like the shit would get real at 42 having a baby.
I couldn't do it. Tina's amazing. Like, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because at what age do you become like a high-risk pregnancy? Because it isn't at some age.
35 is technically when they consider a mother at a high risk. When I had my daughter, I was 20, so very young, and she was born with a heart condition. So they followed me a little extra closely because of the history of my daughter with her. She had a atrial septal defect, ironically or not, which will take me into the next segment. So atrial septal defects, the acronym or the initials for that are ASD. And my son has autism spectrum disorder, which is also ASD. So how about that?
Yeah. I didn't even know that. See, and I've known Tina a while now, and I didn't even know like it connected like that. That's kind of crazy. It's like it was meant to be in a crazy way.
Right. I was like, this is weird.
With those big challenges that you've had, how did you overcome some of your biggest challenges?
So when Jack was born, everything was, typical in every sense of the way. Granted, I was an older mother, but I think I would, more set in my ways. I was married and financially stable and whatnot. It was the challenges occurred when he was about 4 months old. I realized that something wasn't quite right with Jack. I kind of kept things to myself because I didn't. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
No, she told me she was going to cry. And I was like, we appreciate the realism.
So I pushed through keeping this information to myself. When babies get to be about 4 months old, they start coming out of their own, right? They start having their own little personalities, and Jack kind of wasn't. So being a pediatric nurse myself, I was kind of keen on what he should be doing, and he wasn't doing it. So I did tell one of my best friends who, listened to me and whatnot. And then we'll fast forward to when he was about 9 months old. My sister was the first person who said, "Hey, do you think he might have autism?" And it was then that I realized I can't keep this, my little secret anymore. So we had to get to the bottom of it. And Jack he had his hearing checked again at 9 months. I pushed for diagnosis. It comes very difficult to get a diagnosis of autism at such a young age. I heard you're an older mother. You do too much for him. Boys are lazy. So it was very hard to hear that from professionals, but I also knew that I wasn't crazy, that this child of mine who could care less that I was entering or leaving a room, he didn't imitate, he didn't point, he didn't clap his hands, he was in his own little world. So if you look at autism red flags, early signs, the red flags, he had practically every one by the time he was 9 months of age. So it was a bit of a shock to the system hearing it when he finally got the diagnosis, which wasn't until he was 19 months old when the diagnosis came.
10-month battle. Well, actually technically longer than that if you start from the very beginning, but
true. Yeah.
I don't think I would have been able to tell like with Jackson at 4 months. So can you elaborate a little more on like what really stuck out to you that early that you could tell? I mean, aside from you being a nurse, like how could you tell that early?
The first thing that I was noticing was his lack of excitement to see me coming into the room or leaving the room or being right there in his face and making all those goofy, silly sounds that we make to our children. And he wasn't giving me anything back. Then another flag was when he starts eating solid foods at 4 months, right? So you're giving them the spoon and they open their mouth, they're looking at you and opening, and he was not looking at me at all. Constantly looking the other way. I would have to try and find his mouth to put the spoon in it. Not that he was fighting the spoon, never did he fight it. But it was a complete lack and avoidance of eye contact or looking at me and looking at my mouth.
When you talk to baby and they coo and garble back at you, is that what you mean by he wouldn't respond? He didn't really do that. He didn't smile and like goo goo gaga back at you.
Right. His babble was very short lived. Maybe 1 week he did a babble, and then that was it. He would smile occasionally, but he was far, far beneath what a typical child would be doing or typical baby at that age. So at 4 months, it is a little bit hard. So it was only like a couple of little things here and there. Then as we got to 6 months of age, not responding to his name, never did. Up, he does now, but he wasn't then. Loud noises, soft noises, with zero response. It wouldn't matter if sounds were real loud or sounds were real soft. It seemed as though he was oblivious to it. Stranger anxiety, there was zero stranger anxiety. Anyone could come up to him and take him, and he would care less. There was still the lack of eye contact, lack of no response to his name, not even a lack, it was no response to his name. Imitation was not there. There was no pointing. There was no imitating of clap your hands so big, come to mommy, and you put your arms out and the child puts their hands up. There was none of that. None of that happened.
Wow. Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, it was, and it again, I just kept getting from the doctors, oh, well, he's a boy, he's lazy, and you're doing too much for him. And I'm like, he's a baby. How can I
do too much
for a baby?
Yeah,
really.
Exactly. That doesn't make any sense. You can't really do too much for it. They can't really do anything for themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. So then at 9 months of age, when my sister had said, do you think he may have autism? Because we would be at parties and Jack would be, in the high chair and have no interest on what was going on around him. So he had his little iPad and he would watch Mickey Mouse and he wouldn't care what was going on anywhere around him. Doesn't matter. He was tuned into that iPad. Later, after all my research and understanding of autism, I think that early on was a huge sign. So people with autism like to have control. And so at 9 months of age, this child who had zero control over so many things in life had control of that iPad. And he could push play or go to a scene and rewind it and go back to it and repeat because he was in control. And you see that a lot with people who have autism, that whole routine and sticking to what they know, how they understand, and they can comprehend facts so much, because a fact is a fact is a fact, right? So
right,
2 plus 2 is always 4, right? So people who can tell you that an autistic person can tell you that in 1922 it was sunny, but it became rainy later in the day. Well, they may be looking at an almanac of some sort and seeing that the weather of that day will never change. It happened. It's in the past. It's a fact now. So it's quite interesting, the autism brain.
What changed the doctor's mind to be like, okay, yeah, he for sure has autism?
So there's a questionnaire that you do at 9 months of age and again at 18 months of age. And it's there's an MChat and an ASQ, and it's basically checking your child's developmental milestones. At 9 months of age, when I brought it to their attention that I think he may be autistic and he did the screening, he failed it. So they said, well, he's young. Let's see what's happening. He could just be delayed and not autistic. So of course that, sounded pretty much okay, but he literally had none of the milestones met. So if any parent out there is listening and there's a ASQ or an MChat questionnaire that you're filling out and that child is failing it miserably, start pushing, start fighting the fight.
Yeah, because isn't it true? I don't know if it is or not, that like if your doctor doesn't give him an actual diagnosis of autism, like you won't get any like assistance.
With autism, once you have an autism diagnosis on your medical record, it does open up the door for more interventions per se. It's not to say there's many people out there that I'm sure actually have an autism diagnosis and just don't have it for numerous reasons. One being a parent is in denial or both parents are in denial. A doctor misses it. They're misdiagnosed as being hyperactive, or they're misdiagnosed as being attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity. And I'm not saying that that's not what it is, but there are some that are out there that have a diagnosis that's not being diagnosed. So once you have it, it does open up doors to more resources that people are afraid to say, yes, my child has autism.
Yeah, I bet. Is there usually a typical age that they diagnose? Is that why the doctor was so like, oh, he's too young?
Yeah, that's a good question. So because developmentally, things happen within a certain range per se, children that young, unless they are severely showing symptoms and or there's a comorbidity along with it, then usually the diagnosis is later. You will typically see a diagnosis as early as 18 months to 2 years. There have been children diagnosed earlier, but then again, it's like what interventions could really benefit the child at 12 months of age, right? They're a baby anyway. So I can attest to that because we did have therapy start at 9 months of age and they called it play therapy. And the therapist would come to our house 1 hour a week and work one-on-one with Jack and me, showing me little things that we can do to help engage him in typical play, joint play, and show interest in a toy. He would have those typical looking at things that spun around. So he would flip a truck over and just keep turning the wheels. So for instance, this therapist would come in and play with the truck the appropriate way of saying vroom or pushing it across the floor and then have him push it back. That would take weeks for him to do that one thing of her pushing it to him and then him pushing it back. Weeks for that to happen. So the play therapy was very slow and did very little improvement. But again, he was a baby, right? So
Right.
How do you keep a 9-month-old, 10-month-old, 11-month-old, 12-month-old engaged in an activity? So so it's getting a diagnosis that early. It would, early as far as a diagnosis, you got to think, well, then now what? What would we do differently? And I don't think we would have done really anything differently per se. He's been getting speech this whole time and he's 9 now. So he has speech and he has occupational therapy and he has ABA therapy, which is applied behavioral analysis, which is basically helping with socialization and communication. And along with socialization and communication comes behaviors. Along with that, he also has that sensory processing disorder. So think of your senses and all the things that come with it. Hearing, tasting, smelling, touching. There's actually 7, but proprioceptor and tactile. When the wind blows the hair on your arms, you can feel it. So a person with sensory processing disorder, they may be hypersensitive or hyposensitive. So if you imagine a very extremely windy day and every hair on your body is being pulled, that could be a child who is hypersensitive to tactile. Proprioceptor is when you're upside down, you know that you're upside down. So for my son, his proprioceptor, he's seeking it. He needs more of it. So he's the one that likes to be upside down. He likes to have squeezes. Yeah, he wouldn't mind a hug or two if you could just put your arm around him and just, but then he does like a Duggar hug. You remember the Duggar? Like side hug you. I'm like, get over here. You're not doing no Duggar hug.
So is that really normal that those things go hand in hand with autism, the sensory processing disorder?
Yes. So usually you will see autism with sensory processing disorder, but you could have sensory processing disorder without autism.
Okay. So they are very common to be diagnosed together.
Right. Okay. And along with ADHD, like a child with autism most times goes hand in hand with ADHD, but that ADHD can be connected to the sensory processing disorder.
And a lot of times ADHD can be diagnosed and it's autism. So
you got it.
Like because I know of a couple of friends that were diagnosed with ADHD and then later diagnosed with actually like minor autism.
Right. And that's
like
the thing with that, like sometimes people are like, oh, they grew out of it. And it's not that a person grows out of it. They've learned how to cope. Mm-hmm. They've learned how to adapt themselves into our world. And I do that with Jack each and every day. And his biggest obstacle is the socialization aspect of life. So when you socialize with somebody, you're seeing visual cues, verbal cues, audio cues, right? He misses those cues. So when a person says, hi, Jack, unless he is 100% paying attention to that cue, he won't give you a response. So it's quite difficult. So it's a lot of repetition and it's a lot of trial and error. And you just keep on going and don't stop.
That sounds like a full-time job.
Pretty much. Thankfully, Jack's a pretty chill kid. Thank God.
He is.
He's downstairs now watching Mickey Mouse. I came upstairs because keeps rewinding it to the same scene over and over again. But he's smiling and smiling and smiling, and he's a very happy kid.
Well, that's good. 1+, right?
Chill and happy. Yeah. Just make sure you have an iPad charged.
Sometimes more than
one.
And
Mickey Mouse cued.
Right. Yeah, Mickey Mouse. He knows how to, maneuver. Like, it's very easy to do for your child, especially if it's a child with special needs. So it's very easy to do things for them, either because they're so slow at getting a task done. You can get it done faster. Our world is so fast and quick with everything. Mm-hmm. Jack reminds us that, you know what, just take your time, slow it down. What's the big deal? So I do that often with him, especially in school, because they're always saying, quickly get to the next class. And I'm like, what's the big deal if my child who doesn't have any sense of urgency gets to your classroom 1 minute later than everybody else? Let everybody else get there. It's noisy. They're putting their things down. Who's talking, who's not talking. And then let him come in when it's calm. What's the big deal? And then I say that I'm on the flip side of that. You better hurry him up if it's a fire. So for sure. Right? We got to make sure that he understands that a fire drill, even if it's a drill or if a fire alarm should be for real, he needs to know those steps of action. So his safety is huge in my head.
Yeah, because he doesn't understand the meaning of safety necessarily, right? From me being around you, like he doesn't, like, we go to the beach a lot, obviously, and he loves the water, but he doesn't have that fear of drowning necessarily, right? Or am I totally
right? No, you're right there. And if the water were to take him out, or he were to get into any kind of trouble, or if he were to fall in a pool, he will not scream help.
Yeah.
He will not
That's a
scream.
problem.
So that's a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So normally you would hear, if someone's in trouble, you're going to hear their screams. The only time I've heard him scream is if he's actually fallen and has gotten physically hurt, is the only time I've heard him scream. And he doesn't scream for mommy. He's just screaming. He's not saying, mommy, mommy. It's just it's a scream, my child's hurt scream. So yeah, that safety aspect. Even one time my husband had said, well, we can leave Jack here by himself, which we can't because he's not even old enough, but that's beside the point. So for instance, he said, well, I said to my husband, well, let's see if he even understands. Like, what if something happens? You never know, right? What if something happens? What if something catches fire and the smoke alarms start going off? I asked Jack, what do you do? What if the alarm goes off? And all he did was repeat what I said. Alarm. And I'm like, no, Jack, if the alarm goes off, you have to get out. He doesn't know all those steps. He doesn't understand, get out of the house, get to the neighbor, knock on the door. Like, these are things that have to be taught and repeated over and over again. Now, we're military, so this isn't my forever home. Do I show him all that now? Do I show him each and every time we move? It's a lot of things. So
yeah,
you go back to that, okay, let's just not leave him alone, and then we don't have to worry about it. So
yes,
it's prioritizing what to do now and what we need to do by a certain time.
Yeah. So he can't make those connections. Like, alarm means I need to leave. You need to help him make that connection by doing it over and over and over again.
Yes.
So you actually brought me to a question I just had. With the military and moving around a lot, is it hard for him to adjust when you guys move? Thankfully, or has he not had to deal with it?
Yeah, no, we're so in the beginning, when the diagnosis came, I was instructed it would be best to give Jack as much consistency as possible. Give him routines, and I thought to myself, well, that doesn't sound right, because life is not about routines per se, right? Yes, we get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you have breakfast, whatever. But his breakfast doesn't have to be cereal every morning. It could be cereal, it could be pancakes, it could be just fruit. You have to learn to adjust to things. Another thing that they said was like, oh, make sure you take the same route to school every day. And I'm like, what? Like, why would I drive the same? Like, normally we do, right? I purposely would take him different routes to school so that he's not so accustomed to the same thing over and over, that he's like, oh, we're going this way today. No problem. Oh, we're going that way today. No problem. So those types of things we've been doing since the very beginning. So he's traveled from Philadelphia to Michigan, which is about a 10-hour drive, shorter if you're my husband. And he was a toddler. You would not even know you had a child in that car. That iPad was on, and he just played with his iPad. And he did enjoy watching things go by in the car, like how fast, a tree looks as you're going by trees. So he was getting
when your husband
visuals.
is driving.
A lot of trees. Yeah. That's true. So he did get that visual input, which I think helped too. So he's fine in cars. We stayed in many, 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 many hotels, my friends' houses overnight for a week, go to another friend's house for another week. He's no issues at all. We go to restaurants. We don't hold him back from that. So he knows, like, he goes into a restaurant that he has to sit there with mommy and daddy or whoever he's with. And he behaves. But there are children and individuals who do have a lot of difficulty with that because of those other comorbidities I talked about with sensory processing disorder, that those sounds or the change of something can just throw them off completely. Thankfully, Jack doesn't have that. And
probably because
probably
because you did all those things. Maybe it stopped him from getting into that rhythm.
That's what I'm hoping. And yeah. So as I was talking with his developmental pediatrician, and we were talking about Jack is on Atrial, and that's, does it help his autism? No. Does it help his sensory processing and his ADHD? Yes. It helps him with impulsive behaviors. So yeah, it does reduce his impulse to go look out the window when he hears a fire engine go by, or the impulse to open up the door right away when the doorbell rings, right? That's a thing that I have to teach him.
That is a big thing.
It's like, he did do that one time. I was in the shower and I heard the doorbell, and I quickly got out of the shower and threw on a robe, and Jack has the door open, and it's like the UPS man standing there. And I was like, did he come out to you? And he goes, no. I said, he has autism. What happened? And he said, oh, I just knocked on the door and he answered it. And I said, is your mom or dad there? And he said, yes. And then you came downstairs. I'm like, okay. So, I mean, these are the things, like the doorbell rings. What do? You do go answer it. But with Jack, what if the person said, come on, let's go and get in the car? He probably would.
Yeah. He doesn't have that protective safety thing to be like, oh, wait a minute, I don't know this person.
Everybody is his friend.
Right.
He wants everyone to be his friend.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And he's the sweetest. So there's no doubt that everybody would want to be.
Blonde hair and blue eyes, right? Ree? I mean,
right.
What are you going to do?
What exactly? What are you going to do?
Exactly.
So one of my biggest questions for you, if you could tell other moms of autistic children who are either just starting out or are feeling super overwhelmed, one super important thing, which I know it's hard to limit it to one thing, but what would you tell them?
Have a go-to person, even if it's just one person. When Jack got his diagnosis and I was falling deeper and deeper into what can I do to save him? And I didn't know what I can do, and I just wanted him fixed. So of course I don't know. Early on, you're just so overwhelmed because you think of what you do know. And a lot of times what we do know is what we see. And it's these kids who are self-injuries, or they're in a home and they're just so lost in themselves, and the parents don't know what to do. And I did have one friend who I'm still friends with, who has a daughter who has autism. And I reached out to her, and she lived many states away. And I reached out to her, and I just cried and cried and cried. And she helped me to just step away from the ledge, because I was just ready to jump and be like, I didn't know what to do. So she helped me to breathe. Remember to breathe. So you need that one person that you can go to, because it will get better and it will get harder, and you will shed a lot of tears, and you will have the smallest of gains will be so huge, and your circle will understand. And there's no explanation needed when you have that support. So you got to find that. Don't give up.
Yeah, we love Jack. My son loves Jack. And I remember at first it was like hard even for Jackson to understand. And Tina was so good at explaining it to him. And they do so good now, like understanding, like, okay, he plays in a different way, but that doesn't mean you can't have fun.
Exactly. Aww. Yeah.
Cute.
It's about expressing what's happening. And a lot of times we shelter our children or the world from real life. And with Jack, I've come to realize that what works is being out there and telling people. So each year when school starts, I write a letter to the teacher that's from me, and I talk about Jack. And then I write another letter that's from Jack to his class, so that they can understand that he is different. But but he's not less. And that's what Temple Grandin, if anyone has ever heard of her. If you're not, you got to watch the movie Temple Grandin. And that is something that she has always said. Different, not less.
I love it.
And see the ability, not the disability. And that'll take you far.
Have those letters helped, you think?
The what?
The letters that you've written to like the teachers in the class, does that help him?
Yeah, to help the class, to help him. Yes, I do. I've had the kid, well, pre-COVID, I would go into the classroom like a couple of months after school has started, and we'd have like a Q&A about Jack. So cool. And it was usually the month of April, because April's Autism Awareness Month. And so I would make it a point to come in, and I would bring coloring puzzles. I'd print out all the puzzle pieces and cut it, and then the kids would color them any way that they want, and they'd hang it on the door. And so it was really cute. So the one girl was like, "How did Jack get asthma?" I'm like, "It's not asthma, it's autism." And then
that's a different thing.
Yeah, it was really cute. And then I would say, "Does anybody know what Jack really likes?" And they would be like raising their hand. I'll say, "He really likes trains. He's always playing with trains." And I said, "That's right. Jack really likes trains. Well, what kind of toy is your favorite toy?" And so it was just a way that, that even though he's different than the kids, they're all alike in so many ways. And just having that passion and compassion and empathy for your fellow human being is huge. So,
honestly, adults could even use that right now. Everybody needs that. Everybody needs to learn compassion right now.
Yeah.
Yes, they do, especially right now.
Mm-hmm. So on because you talked that there are very like high days and low days with autism. On your lowest day, how do you deal with those struggles?
Vodka.
I like that. That's a good answer. Lots of vodka.
Usually I talk to myself and say, "This is it. This is as good as it's going to get. He's going to be with us the rest of our lives. We have to make this work. This is it. This is as good as it's getting." And a lot of crying. And then it does follow up with a drink. I'm not going to lie. I'll have a drink. And then out of nowhere, my son will come in the room and he'll do something for the first time. And then that gives me that reminder that each day will get better, and that these obstacles happen, and just don't give up. And then I'll meet a parent with a child or young adult with autism who's several years older than Jack. Mm-hmm. And they'll tell me a story about their child, and it's just, the hope is there. And so when I'm having those low moments, I just think of those times, and I think about all the times that Jack proves me wrong, and we just keep on going.
And I think about even in the time that I've known Jack, and like he's already come so far just in the shorter time that I've known him. Like he talks without being cued, and I mean, he's come so far already, even just in the couple years that I've known you guys.
Yeah, I hear that, and that helps me too when I hear, people saying that to me. And so, always know you never know when someone needs to hear something. And so saying those things nicely to people, not just me and Jack and autism, I just mean like anything in life, you never know if someone's having that bad day, like when you tell someone, "Wow, your hair looks really good today." And that little comment can make a person feel so much better and be like, "Okay, I'm going to get through this moment."
That's what I did when I got on the phone with Rieta. I was like, "I like the bun."
She did. She did. I told a lady in Target today that I like her earrings. I'm a compliment person though. Like I feel that way because I know it makes people feel good and I like to make other people feel good. So I'm definitely a compliment person. I like your earrings, I like your dress, your hair looks nice. Like, I mean, nobody can be mad about that.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And people need to be a little bit more happy nowadays. A little less sad, a little more happy is how I like to view the world.
It's just so hard with this dang pandemic going on.
Brings me to another question. Since you're a nurse, how has your work changed during this pandemic that we got going on her?
Well, I have been working more so. I am a COVID resource nurse for the schools. So it's helping the schools get things going and following the suggested guidelines from the Department of Health and CDC, working together with the DOE, Department of Education. So I've been busy with that. I also do home health care, and I do on-call. I'm on call on weekends. I'm also a mobile research nurse. So I'm going out into the field and collecting data from patients because nobody wants to go anywhere. So they want all the health care and all the health assignments to come to their home. So I've been working more. So COVID's been good to me for my job. And COVID's been good for Jack because he's all about isolation and not socializing. So he's been quite happy.
Well, and then you can do a lot of your work from home. So he also gets more mom. And even though he might necessarily not be like, maybe he wasn't like that before, but now he's all about mom.
Yeah. I did like the beginning months. It was really cool being home. And I don't know if you can hear him. He's making some funky noises right now.
I heard him. He kind of sounded like a dolphin.
Yeah, right. Almost like a horn, like, huh?
Yeah.
So being home with him it was really cool because he was following the curriculum that his special education teacher had given him. And it was really interesting to see him navigating and doing so well independently because there was no other students around him disturbing him. And there wasn't the sounds of school and the outside noise, and it was quiet. And a couple of times we put on meditation music in the background. So, and it was very nice. So
this is one of my big questions because I always like to
remind people. She's a big question kind of girl.
Well, and I like to remind people of like the good things, and well, Tina knows this. So what's one thing you are most proud of, either Jack related or work related, whatever route you want to pick?
Oh my gosh. Most proud of. Was one of my prep questions?
It was.
You know what? One of my most proud moments was going back to school and becoming a registered nurse. I went back to school at a late age. I was 38 when I graduated from nursing school. So it's still to this day, I cannot believe that I have the initials RN at the end of my name. Like, I'm just like floored.
See, and it's proof that saying is right. You're never too old to do something or start something or be something. Like, there's no limit.
Unless it's jumping out of an aircraft, I'm not doing that, even though it's on my list of
Well, that doesn't necessarily have to do with age. That's just you don't want to.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's just a no in general.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I'm with you. I don't even like flying, let alone jumping out of a plane. So
amen.
Tom wanted me to go do that, jump out of a plane. I said maybe, and then I was just like, it's too much money. I'm not doing that. I'm not paying that much money to just go jump out of a plane. Nope.
I'm pretty sure I would pass out or something. It wouldn't be good. It would be
I would pass out or poop my pants.
Or all the above. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Connie, did you have any more that you wanted to ask before we wrap it up?
Yes, I do. What is one of the biggest tools that you use to help your son, the processing disorder, everything that he has to face? Like, do you have any like cool tools or tips or tricks for our listeners who might have autistic kids?
Yeah. So the two things that have always worked for us is being patient and giving him forewarning. So patience, because you're going to be doing things over and over and over again as if it's the first time every time. And forewarning is letting him know that something's going to end or something's going to start. So, you know, at nighttime, I say, okay, it's time for bed. Turn off the lights. Not that it'll be a meltdown, but it will be more problematic. Okay, you know, and then but if I say to him, you have 2 more minutes and then lights out, and he'll say 2 more minutes, lights out. And then I come in and I said, 2 minutes is up. Now what? And he's like, lights out, everything gets turned off and he goes to bed. That's it. So
I like it.
Patience, because of the repetition, and give your children warnings of what's coming, just to let them process that, okay, she told me I'm doing something, but I remind, okay, here she comes. It reminds me again. So those 2 things are the biggest takeaway. And, of course, you know, your support person, have a person.
And an iPad fully loaded with Mickey Mouse.
Many of them. We've been through many. He's 9 and we've probably gone through, oh gosh, at least 10 iPads.
Wow.
At least.
Wow.
iPad,
mostly because he's destroyed them.
Kids.
iPad, you need to hook her up. Get her a permanent free one every time it breaks. Like, we need to get in touch with iPad and be like, hey, make sure that she's always got a working one.
Maybe we can have Jack work on a case that is autistic proof.
That's a great idea. I think you should.
Because I think the last 3 that he broke was him trying to open it to see how it works.
Yeah.
Curiosity
3
killed the iPad.
Yeah, 3 in 1 week, and they all look like they were torn apart the same way. I think he was trying to figure it out. Yeah.
That also shows how smart he is, though, that he's like, I can open this. I can figure out how it works. I can watch it.
This. I'm like, oh my gosh. So,
You're like, great. The 3rd one? Really?
Yeah. He's like, throw it in the trash. Go to store. I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
And I'm guessing Apple Care doesn't really work that way either. They're like, you tried to open this.
I know,
You're not supposed to. We can't replace this.
I don't know what's happening at this point of the game. I'm letting my husband take care of that. So,
see, that's another thing that you could invent. Apple Care for Autism, AAA.
There you go.
I like it.
Yeah. I'm assuming, are you still friends with your go-to person? Is she still your go-to person?
Yeah, she's still that one that when I'm losing my shit, she's the one that puts it together. We're still connected. We still talk all the time, but for real, when it's a point where I'm at a low and it's autism related, she's who I go to.
And she also understands too.
Right.
She knows what you're going through.
Yeah. And she's a nurse. And so that helps that we're both. Yeah.
So you guys are kindred spirits.
Pretty much.
So this is how to deal when shit gets real. Follow us on Instagram, email us any questions, or if you want to be a guest, check us out every Friday.